Hey, what's the crack? This is Oliver Keane, Motion Design, and today is your first beginner project. So what we're going to do is going to animate some simple type. So basically this letter O, I'm going to show you right now. So as you can see, it's just like a letter O, you know, for Oliver Keane and so on. But yeah, it's a bit of like shape animation and so on, and I think this is a good first beginner project to get into because yeah, it's just like simple shapes. I've showed you a bit about shape animation in the past tutorials, but I haven't really showed you like extra techniques that you can use, and this is a really good project to start with. I got inspiration for this project from a designer that I really love called Thomas Rolfe, and he does some stuff for animography. If you check it out here, you can see here on Dribble, so animography and Thomas Rolfe. Thomas Rolfe is really good. I'd check out his work, it's amazing. But you can see up here at the top, it's very similar to mine. He's like just a shape animation and so on, and he does some really cool stuff. So I would check out his stuff. I'm gonna put a link to the animography page underneath this video. But let's jump into this right now. So we're gonna come here, and straight away what we're gonna make is a new composition. So we've come up here and go new composition. I'm gonna make it 1920 by 1080. I'm gonna make it 30 frames per second, and I'm gonna make this, I'd say 6 seconds. So we go to 6 seconds right here, and we can just basically call this letter O. There you go, and press OK, and then we get a composition. I'm going to leave it blue in the background because that was my composition color, but I'm actually going to make a solid layer as well. So if you come up here to new, go solid, and basically make it the color, whatever color you want basically. I'm just going to make it blue. So I'm just going to make a blue background, whatever color you want, just so we have like a background color in there. So I'm just going to go OK, and then that's our solid in the background. So that's our background. I'm just going to rename this by pressing enter. So I just got a BG for background. There you go. And what do you think we're gonna make first? I know we've seen like the letter O. You can see it in my animation here. What do you think we'd make straight away from this? What would be first, you know, shape we'd make? You'd think you'd have to make an ellipse, wouldn't you? But you wouldn't actually, because you can see here this ellipse back here kind of move and changes and so on. And what we actually have to make is a rectangle. I know that sounds a bit weird, but let's do that together right now. So if you come up here and go layer, go new, and we're going to go shape layer like that, okay? And then we're going to add in a rectangle here. Yeah, and then we're going to add in a fill. So if we go fill, and I'm going to make this fill white. So if you pop down here and make this one white, go up there to white, okay? And then I'm going to go to my rectangle path right here, and I make the size a lot bigger. So you see it's 100%. I'm going to make it probably 500. There you go. And there we go. We have like our first shape. I'm going to call this shape, I'm going to press enter and call this O-U-T-T-R-O. So outer O, okay? And why am I calling this outer O? Because this is actually going to be our stroke for the outside. With this tutorial, it's going to be like two shapes. I'm going to animate the two shapes on top of each other or below each other. So this is the outer O. But what I'm going to do is add some roundness to this, okay? And this is why I'm using a rectangle, okay? Because a rectangle, you get a lot more options. So if I make an ellipse, okay, you don't get like the roundness, you don't get like a lot of this stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is actually up the roundness of this. So what I'm going to do is make this roundness here around 250, and it's going to make a circle. See, so now this rectangle is now a circle, so an ellipse. But look what we can do. We can actually play with this, you know, we can bring it back and forward. So then we have all this like dynamic kind of range with this shape. So you can actually like bring it back to a full rectangle and then make it a circle. And that's really powerful, you know, we can play around with that and keyframe it and so on. So I would for sure make it 250, okay, make it that, okay, and now we have our outer shape, okay? And that's great now because we can actually animate this, we can do whatever we want with it and so on. But now what we actually need the inner O as well. So we need to make the O shape basically collapse this so we can see everything that's going. So if I press Command D, okay, I'm going to rename this inner O. There you go. And with this one, I want to make the color, okay, the same color as the background. So if I come up here and I color pick right here, so if you want to look for your color pickers right here, so color pick the background. What you're going to see really just like a kind of faint line and stuff, and it looks kind of low res. But this inner O, what we need to do is actually come down here to the contents and come down to the rectangle path and see the size here. Make the size smaller. See? So I'm gonna make it around there, just like, you know, make it 450. So right there, okay? So my inner O is 450 and my outer O, I'm just gonna bring this up so we can see, is 500. So yeah, see them right there. And yeah, that's our O. So our O is built. We're only going to be really animating these two layers. So I'm going to actually lock my background so I don't like move it or screw it up or anything like that, because it happens, to be honest. I've done it myself in the past, so don't worry about that. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to take away my stretch. If you think there's too many like panels open here, just press this little button here and it takes it away. And you can remove those other ones if you want as well, because sometimes they can get really annoying because you don't really need them for right now. So okay, let's start animating this. So what we're first going to do is animate the inner. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to have this circle scale down a bit and then start moving into different shapes and so on. So what I'm going to do first of all is come to the inner O's keyframes. So I'm going to first of all play with the scale. So see, my size is 450. What I'm going to do is add a keyframe here with the stopwatch. So click there, and then I'm going to come along to say like 20 frames, and I'm going to make this smaller. Okay, right, like that. So I'm going to bring it down to say 350 or 350 as the Irish say, as I always say. And if we come back here and you press spacebar to press play, see, it shrinks down, but you can see it's really slow, you know. It's like this looks kind of dragging on a bit. I'm going to add a bit of easing to this. So if you come here and if you highlight this keyframe and right click, come over to keyframe assistant and go easy ease in. Okay, and then if you press spacebar, so there you go. So it shrinks down. Okay, I want it to shrink down and I want it to stretch up. So what I'm going to do is shrink down, and I'm going to give a bit of time. See this little thing here, to constrain proportions? Sometimes you might want to click that off, and I'm going to do it in this for sure, okay? But like, I'm going to add a keyframe first, so right here, and I'm going to turn off my constrain proportions, okay? Why I'm doing that is because I'm going to turn it back on for a second. If I say keep that constrain proportions, it's going to keep it all as like a circle, and I won't be able to move things up and down in terms of like, I can't really like stretch the shape from side to side and so on like that. So I can press Command Z so I get back to 350, but turn off that constrain proportions, okay, and then come along here to say 2 seconds, okay, and then you stretch up your shape, see, like that. And then if I stretch it the other way like that, okay, it's a different O shape now. And like if I go back here now and press play, you see it pauses, so like it goes here, shrinks down and comes up. I'm going to add a bit of ease into this again. So if I go here and go ease in, and then if you press play, get this nice animation. And I think it's a bit slow on the pause, so I'm going to bring this back to say 1 second. If you go bam, bam, see, it was a nice little animation there going on already. So if we bring this back again and see what's happening, see, you get like a nice bit of clean animation that way. What I want to do now is I want my outer shape to match my inner shape, so right here. So what I'm going to do is add some keyframes to the outer shape. I'm going to add a marker. If you don't know how to add markers are really useful. I'm just going to pull this up a tiny bit. Markers are really useful because then you can mark where your keyframes are. You don't actually have to look inside of your inner O. So see over here, this little guy here, this is actually a marker. If you click that once, I'll add in, you know, a little marker. I love markers. I use them for so much things. So if you double click that marker, left click it twice, and you actually can name your markers. I call this outer motion start, and then if you label this whatever color you want, I normally do red because it's easy to know, and then if you press OK, see, you know then where your outer animations will start. So if you close this up, you don't need to look at that because you know the keyframes, see, start right there. So what I want to do is start my animation on my outer. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to find my size for my outer. So I'm going to add a keyframe there because that's where I want to start. I'm going to drag along. Remember what I said about the constrained proportions? Click that off, okay? And I'm going to drag this side here over to match, you know, my other guy, see? So if you just pull it along, I'm going to do this one, say, just whatever kind of matches, you know, almost, you know what I mean, right around there, okay? And let's see what happens, okay? So I'm gonna go animate, and that goes in, okay? But I want this to be a lot faster and smoother, so I'm gonna highlight this one, and I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna come down here to ease in, okay? You can see here now the animation, so you see this. I actually want my animation to start later. So I want my outer animation to actually start later. So I'm going to actually click these two keyframes and drag it along. So what I want to do is have the inner suck in for a second, then goes to the shape, and then the outer, you know, moves. Okay, and I know I have a marker here saying outer motion start. That was just for my kind of mind and like how I can actually show you guys how to use markers. If you do move your keyframes and you're like, oh, what do I do now with my marker? You actually can just pull your marker over. So if you click it and actually just drag it over, and then it's right there. See, I would recommend starting to use markers because markers are really handy, especially if you're handing over files to other designers and so on. At least they know where like the motion is starting and so on. So it's really, really handy. What we're having right now is the inner goes in, then it goes up, and then the outer goes up. Okay, but what I want to do as well, okay, is add a bit of like secondary animation. Okay, so I'm going to play around with these keyframes. You can see, you can do that yourself as well. So see how that like sucks in. I want to give a bit of animation. I'm actually going to make this a tiny bit faster, so drag that keyframe back. See, like that. I want actually the inner one to actually have a bit of motion as well. Like I want it to move a bit as well because it looks a bit static just for the outer one going in. So I want it to shrink down a tiny bit as well. So a good trick to know as well, if you click on the top O, okay, so the inner O, and if you click Command or Control, so if you hold down Control or Command and click on the both of them, so the inner and outer O, and just press U, it'll show you all your active keyframes, so all the keyframes that have been added. It's really, really good thing to know. I'm going to drag back this label because that's where my outer motion is starting. So okay, so what do we have right now? Zoom out, goes up, and then goes back. What I want to do is when this starts to, you know, get smaller, I want my inner one to get a tiny bit smaller as well, you know, to kind of have a bit of cool shape to it too. So it just looks a bit more like bouncier or a bit cooler or so on. So I'm going to go size again, and then I'm going to come back here, and I just basically want the size to just get, you know, tiny bit smaller, okay, when it gets there, just to give it a bit of, you know, a bit of like, you know, just to give it look a bit cooler, to be honest. You know, I keep saying the word cool, but it does look a bit cooler when you do it that way. So it looks more like a lozenge in a way, you know. So now, okay, I'm going to add some ease into this, okay. So I'm going to go ease in, and now what do we have? See, that tiny bit of extra animation that we added just like adds a lot to it. So like that little keyframe, instead of having it looking so, you know, static and so on. So what do we have right now? So we have zooms back, goes up, and then the whole thing goes into a new shape. See, like that. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to actually make this turn into almost like a phone shape, and that's where the roundness comes in, because remember we started with a rectangle shape and now we can play with the roundness of this. And that's the benefits of starting with a rectangle shape than an ellipse, because we have so much more control of everything that's going on with the roundness of the shape. What we have right now is that, and I'm gonna give it a break for a second like I have been, and around here I'm gonna actually start playing around with the roundness so it turns into a phone shape. So I'm gonna come here to my inner and my outer O, and if you press UU, it'll give you all of your controls. So if you press U once, it'll show you your keyframes, and if you press UU, it'll give you all of your controls and so on. So what we're going to do is play around with the roundness. See the roundness right here? I come here to the roundness, okay, and go click right there for this one, and click right there on that one, and then I'm going to just drag over a tiny bit, say like to 315, and the roundness on the outer, I'm actually going to bring it back. So watch what happens here, and it starts to turn into, you know, kind of a phone shape in a way, like that. And I'm going to do the same thing with the roundness on the inner, okay. I'm going to bring it back here. Okay, so it kind of goes to like a phone type shape. See, you kind of need to play around with these values a bit to actually get exactly what you want, because sometimes like if you go too round, it might look a bit weird inside. You just kind of need to match the kind of look of the outside. So what do we have here? I'm just going to go 50, okay, and see what that looks like. So there you go. So if we go back here, what happens? Okay, so I'm going to press play with the spacebar. See, and I'm going to add some ease in again. So highlight these two guys and right click and go keyframe assistant and go ease in, and then drag this one back a bit because it's kind of too slow. Let's see what happens now. So it goes back, goes up, move them together, and then it goes out. I'm going to drag these a tiny bit more, and I'm going to drag these back so it's just a bit, there's not much of a pause. So if you press play with the spacebar again and see what happens. Yay. I'm actually going to drag these back until we get the desired look that we want. See? There you go. I think actually we can make the inner one a tiny bit more less round, because I think it looks a bit... Actually, I'm going to do both of them. So this one and this one. Just make it a tiny bit less round, because then it looks more like a phone or something like that, you know. And then let's see what that looks like. There you go. So you're getting like a lot more range in this for sure, you know. You're getting a lot of like different shape animation going on in one letter. So I definitely would recommend doing this type of stuff, because with different letters and so on and different things, because you can actually like do a lot with this. It's really good with the letter O because, you know, it's a round shape and you can do a lot with it. But I keep playing around with stuff like this, and this is how you get the grips with, you know, animating shapes and so on, because set up a few different like shape layers like stars and so on, and play around with the corners and all that kind of stuff, because it really pays off to your progression as a motion designer. And what we need to do now is loop this. Okay, so we want this animation to loop. Okay, so I want it to basically come back to, you know, this shape at the start. So what we need to do is add some keyframes there. So if we go play that and see what happens, I'm going to add some keyframes around here. So I'm going to go my size and my roundness there, and my size and my roundness here. Okay, and then if you go back here, say to 4 seconds right here. So what we need to do here, okay, is get it back to its first shape basically. So see, 450 by 450 was the first shape, the inner. So that's what we need to do. So 450 by 450. So if you go 450 by 450, click off. Okay, I know you're not going to see anything right now, okay, because we need to go back here again and see this one was 250, the roundness. So the roundness needs to be 250. So if you go here and go 250, let's click down here, he's going to go back to a circle, and then we have to do the same thing with the outer. So we actually need to change back the size. So the size of this was 500 at the start, see right here, because we started animating this, see where it says outer motion start. So it was 500 by 500, and now at the moment it's 288 by 500. So we need to go back and add in here 500, okay, to the size, and then the roundness needs to be what it was, because now it's 54, it needs to be 250. So going back here and just go 250. There you go. And I'm actually gonna add some ease into this as well. So come up here to all these keyframes. So all these keyframes, highlight them all at once, and then come here and then go ease in. Okay, if you press N on your keyboard, okay, N for new, and then if you come back here and press play, you're going to have your whole sequence. Okay, so wait for this is going to be cool. So press spacebar. See, we have our animation looping. See, I think it's a bit too fast there at the end. We need a bit of a break. I'm going to add actually a few extra frames. So drag over your playhead a tiny bit more to say 15. So this is at like 415, and press N again. And then if you press play. And I think the last animation to start is going too fast. What I'm going to do is drag out these keyframes a bit, because it's a bit too fast. So if you press play now again, there you go, you're getting your animation. But what I'm not liking about this, to be honest, I think it's a bit slow overall. I think it's just a bit too slow. So what I'm going to do is highlight all these keyframes, the ones I have. And if you hold down Alt or Alt, and just drag back from the last keyframe right here, just drag back, it actually will shrink down your keyframes. You see, this is really handy to do if you want to retime stuff, so I would recommend doing that. Just highlight all your keyframes, hold down Alt and click the last keyframe you have on your timeline and just drag back while you're holding Alt. It really works, because then you can stretch back all your keyframes at once. So I'll just show you that again. Highlight all these, okay, and then go to your last keyframe. So these are all the last keyframes, so it doesn't really matter which one you go on it for here. But if you do have like one out here, click that one first and then drag back, and then hold down Alt, and then see, you can drag and change all you want. Yeah, so Command Z, and then basically drag it to whatever length you want. I'm gonna bring all this back to 3 seconds around ish, and then I'm gonna press N around 310. Okay, right there, and now I'm gonna press spacebar to play. See, you get a little bit more, you know, range, and it's faster and so on, and you don't have to worry that it's too slow. So it depends really, like each is their own and all that kind of stuff. Just pick like, you know, what pace you want this animation to be, and it's really quick and so on, you know. There you go guys, that's how to animate some type with shapes, so the letter O. In my next tutorial, I'm going to start actually animating some proper type. So I'm going to write some type, and then we're going to break it into shapes, and we're going to do some cool stuff with it. So guys, looking forward to the next tutorial, and see you guys soon. Bye bye.